Hello, it is I, Jesse Blaze Snider, sometimes known as the Coolest Geek Alive. If you listen to my geek culture show, Coolest Geek Alive, Wednesdays and Saturdays, I just finished doing, I'm a little late on today's episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. I just finished doing a Saturday coolest pick. I do coolest classics and coolest picks. Picks are like more recent shit. Classics are some awesome stuff that is like from 2000s, before the 2000s. I did Galaxy Quest today. Great fucking movie. You should go check it out if you're a geek like me and you like, just if you're looking for good movies and TV shows and shit to watch, because so much of the stuff is shit right now. I've been trying to really like offer a lot of that. And if you're a music fan like me and you want some band recommendations, I do a show every Monday called All Your Favorite Bands Suck. And I think we're approaching 50 bands right now. Last week I did Fun. This week I'm doing All American Rejects. Then I got Exhibit. And it's humor and metal and punk and ska and just everything in between, all the stuff that doesn't exactly get the attention in the mainstream that it deserves. But today we are here to talk about, well, we're going to talk about the law of correspondence. But I mean, you know, I have this thing that I wrote up, and you know, I read it every now and then, and it seems like a good time to read it again. And that goes, welcome to Everything They Don't Want You to Know. I'm Jesse Blaze Snider, and I'm here to rip the veil off the secrets hidden by the powerful, the elite, and the mysterious societies that pull the strings behind the scenes. Together, we're going to uncover the truth they're hoarding away, the knowledge taught in the shadowy halls of Freemasonry and whispered among the most influential people on the planet. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, quote John F. Kennedy. Secrecy breeds ignorance, and ignorance breeds control. I'm here to challenge the status quo, smashing through the walls of silence that have kept the truth from the light. As Edward Snowden said, the worst conspiracies are open and notorious. This isn't just a show, it's a movement, a revolt against the darkness of hidden knowledge, an uprising for transparency. I'm here to empower you with the information that has been kept from you for too long. So buckle up and prepare to question everything. Welcome to Everything They Don't Want You to Know. Now, to add to that, I spoke about on the first episode and a few shows now being invited to join the Illuminati, being invited to play one of their parties, and sort of being awakened as a skeptic to the fact that the things that I was basically going, nah, you know, that can't really be true, all of a sudden was right in my face, was very true, was very obvious, was something that I thought was silliness, was, yeah, like an open secret in Los Angeles amongst the right people. And that spooked the shit out of me. And I was already, you know, on a path of enlightenment spiritually, you know, learning the things, so many of the things that I'm teaching you guys now or helping you remember now. And also on like a path of teaching myself, studying, you know, the landscape of reality and what was going on and what was getting in the way of positive progress being made on planet Earth. And, you know, what we have going on right now with, you know, Trump just won the election. And I'm a centrist, I would call myself. And I've been sort of a defender of the Republicans because I feel like this sort of ridiculous, the things being said about Republicans as a group. And, you know, there's just so many unique people who lurk within the Republican Party. There's just a lot of different groups and lots of tiny ones that you might not like. But essentially, the Republican Party is the anti-globalist party. The globalist party is the one world government and, you know, just hand over all of the control of everything to a government that can make everything nice and equal and kind of communist and stuff. Unfortunately, I do not trust any of the powers that be implementing such a change. And, you know, independence is the name of the game. You know, probably politically speaking, I'm probably closest to like a libertarian in terms of how I believe I should not be involved in the governance of other people's lives and they shouldn't be involved in mine. But, you know, I'm probably like, you know, as liberal as you can get, you know, with the exception of things like, you know, putting drugging kids who are feeling like, I'm all about people being able to express themselves and whatever else, actually physically changing your body through surgery and drugs and having that be paid for by the government and various things. Like, dude, the moment you're 18, the moment you've got the money to do anything you want to do, you can do anything you want to do. But, that's where I draw a line, even though I'm very open. I very much, actually, I've been, to be perfectly honest, I'm so liberal that I'm aggravated by the way the liberals are approaching things because it's very destructive. They're being too in your face. And it's, they're baiting the sort of the Catholics. And I don't really believe in that. I believe in harmony, and I believe, and I believe most gays, and, I'm not gay, but I'm non-binary. And please don't go around telling everybody Jesse's non-binary. Like, I don't like to be like identified that way, but it is true that I did grow up in my own mind, very separate from, I didn't really talk about this with anybody, but I was non-binary. I didn't really like guy, girl, like I didn't mean anything to me. And really, honestly, it hasn't meant much to me until more recent times as I've studied like how different the men and women of the world seem to think they are from one another, which I never found. I didn't think men and women were all that different. Or consistently, I didn't think that they were consistently different in like one way or another. I mean, certainly there are stereotypes with men and stereotypes with women, stereotypes with anybody. But, yeah, I the differences of the sexes and the races and all like it's not really something that, that's how non-binary I was, race, the color of my skin. Like I very, very much don't identify with my body, at all. So I'm sort of appalled by, by sexism and racism and just sort of like, what? This is so stupid. But within the context of that, I'm a strategizer, and like I want these people who haven't traditionally accepted these things to be able to come to terms and, accept so that everybody can fucking lead peaceful lives, And I think the gay community, in particular, if I could put the most emphasis on them, I've got plenty of gay friends, but plenty of friends of all variety. Across the spectrum. And generally speaking, I would say that all of my friends, who are cool people, we just want to be left alone. We don't want to be made fun of or getting, slagged in the street and, stupid shit if, we're expressing ourselves and doing what we want to do. Just like, you see a guy in a dress or whatever and just fucking deal with it, and it can be odd for you and stuff like that. Like, I think most reasonable transvestites are cool with you being like, yeah, I'm a guy in a dress. It's striking. I am tall. I am a little more formidable. That's kind of what turns me on about it. That's kind of what I like about it. It's kind of, there's a part of it that it is different. This idea that it's like supposed to all blend in and be the same. Like, I don't want to be the same. I like that I'm a different kind of being. Non-binary. I don't really like that fucking term. And I don't like the terms in general because I think we all deserve our own individual term, and we have it. It's called our name. So Jesse. Yeah, he's non-binary. You can describe me in a lot of different ways, but I don't need like a fucking pronoun. The idea of doing they them is brilliant. They them. Yes. Ooh, let's limit it. Let's cut it down so that this individuation on sex isn't there. It's not necessary. They them. Cool. The moment you make it they, them, and then all these ones that we're making up, oh my God, guys, that flies in the face of the great idea that they, them is. They, them's a great idea. But the other thing is whatever. And they, them, we've been doing, he, her, we've been doing it for a long time. So even though I love the they, them thing, and I try to remind myself something, try to do they, them. It's not particularly important to me, And I don't really see a difference in the he, she. Just you get used to doing it, so there's so much like weirdness, like weird pushiness that's going on in this side of things, and I don't like that. I don't like that because I think that basically it's bad salesmanship for the way the other side lives. Just like the people who went up north to the Norse religion people and like forced them during the Northern Crusades to convert to Catholicism. Like, Jesus wouldn't have done that. That's not cool. Let's not do that. Let's not be pushy like the pushy Catholics who told us we were going to go to hell. Like so much of this, I am like the tip of the fucking, the beginning of that real social justice warrior movement. to people like me who made it cool, who were legit because we cared about it. And because there was a time, like when I was growing up, there was not a lot of champions of this. It was small, it was a small group. And it was people like me who were telling people, oh, you got to watch The Daily Show. And granted, nowadays, I'm a bit detached from all this stuff, as it were. But it wasn't, it slowly grew in popularity until the establishment recognized it as there's a shift and there's a strong group of people who care and are thinking differently. Bernie Sanders really proved it. I was a big Bernie Sanders supporter. Was very disillusioned by the DNC after everything that they did to Bernie to basically block him from being able to run. And I think he could have beat Trump, and I think people would have been happier with some of the possibilities under Bernie. I don't know how much Bernie would have really been able to get done within that DNC. The Democratic Party is very bought by the globalists. And a lot of them are altruists. They think that they're doing the right thing by trading some social influence, some, social treat that they can offer to the public. Look what we're going to do for the black people. Look what we're going to do for the gay community, in exchange for selling the soul of our country and our strength, our ability to do anything, the ability for citizens to make businesses that could possibly rise up to compete. I mean, like, this deck is stacked against us so fucking badly. And unfortunately, going through history, being a part of this exchange, I can tell you that the Democrats have kind of always been this party. The Republicans, they attract all sorts of weirdos. Within the weirdo Republican Party, plenty of people are bought and controlled by the globalists. There's plenty of people in the Republican Party right now, and you can see by different policies that they're backing so wholeheartedly, whatever, they are bought and sold by the Republican Party. But there's plenty of libertarians and people who are not in this globalist cahoots thing. They aren't Bushes. They're there for other reasons, and this was basically the only party in a two-party system they could go to. So a lot of the demonization of the Republican Party is not fair. Even the demonization of the people who are the worst in the Republican Party, who they demonize, isn't exactly fair either, because we talk about these groups like these various supremacists and whatnot, and we don't really, they never get a chance to speak for themselves. And when you go hear any of these people, generally speaking, I've never come across one who was like calling for genocide or something. Generally speaking, they're all like, not to say apologists, like they're the opposite of apologists. Their fathers were black supremacists. Their fathers were religious supremacists, and they feel as though, they're in the business, not in the business, but they're in the family of Nazis, and they're in the family of black supremacists who believe that the government is crushing down their people and hiding their history, and they're not wrong. And there's plenty of pieces of information, if you're a Nazi or a white supremacist, that they will argue about. I mean, one of my best friends is his grandmother, and this was funny because it was years later that I finally heard various pieces of information that do fly in the face of lots of what we're told about World War II. It made me very not righteous about World War II. I used to be very righteous about it. It was like, yeah, punch Nazis and shit. And then all of a sudden I went, fuck, everything I know about this, I've been told by these people who I see lie about everything. So you get to a certain point where you just go, fuck. And you look at, and there's plenty, there are people who have a stake in this. There's people whose fathers were Nazis, and they're like, my dad wasn't so bad, and these concentration camps weren't real, and they didn't really gas anybody, and and there is compelling things that support some of these things. But of course, it's like, what kind of conversation are you having with this? This is a conversation that people would hate to have. But everything in our existence is designed to fucking keep us fighting, keep us paying attention to the church, to the cake and the circuses, distracted by simplicity. They want us to be factory workers and control the fate of the entire planet. And these globalist type people have been slowly taking over and globalizing the whole world for a very long time. So, this thing that's happening right now, you got Trump and you got RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, who are my two favorite Democrats who just left the Democratic Party, and they joined Trump. And at that point, I basically became a Trump supporter because RFK Jr. I was going to vote for him. So if he's going to be given an opportunity in the Trump, you know, thing apparatus to do that, and I know some of you, I don't know, find it hard to believe, and RFK has been so demonized by the freaking left wing media. They're wrong. RFK Jr. is right. He's paying attention to the same things I'm paying attention to. Everything he says, I go, hallelujah. I've got 4 kids. I need to get all of this shit out of the candy that they're eating at Halloween. The recipes in the past decade have changed drastically. The candy we were eating, the candy they were eating, just everything, how things are being grown, the type of vegetables, how bad the meat is when it's not really specifically, grass-fed, free-range, like because they could they'll lock these cows' heads up and they'll drop grass in front of them, and they call that grass-fed. Yeah, they're eating grass. It's terrible. The system is awful. Their food, there's every piece of candy that's sent to Britain gets an additional label put on it that says warning. This shit has a ton of chemicals in it that us in Britain have deemed hazardous to your health. We don't know what the fuck's going on in America, but they still think this shit's cool. It's not cool. I mean, we're using this red dye 40 or whatever it is. I think that's what they call red 40, to dye the food, just so that the food is brighter red. Like, they can still get red from things that are okay for us to eat. Like, in the name of it looking a certain way, and the same thing happens with vegetables and fruit in the supermarket. They'll do all sorts of things to the food that are bad for the food. We're living in a crazy time. So it's interesting, to me, this moment of RFK Jr., also Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard's another person who I trust very much. The fact that they're in there, the fact that they will have the ability to recommend to Trump, who was on Joe Rogan, stating that he was really kind of overwhelmed with the appointment process the first time around. There was just thousands of people he had to appoint, and he had to sort of take advice from the people that he could trust, or he thought he could trust. And a lot of the people that he trusted were not the right people. But this time around, if he's taking recommendations from RFK Jr., that's incredible. If he's taking recommendations from Tulsi Gabbard, that's incredible. If he's taking recommendations from Elon Musk, that's interesting. And then J.D. Vance seems like a real stand-up guy. I've watched a decent amount of time hearing him talk, and he seems like he is a moderate Republican who just wants us all to figure out how to get along. That's all I want, And I'm more of like a Democrat kind of, but I'm a moderate. I'm just always, come on, let's just get together, So that's what I want to see. I want to see somebody who maybe he and I don't totally agree on everything, but like we can like get to the point in the conversation where like, well, what's fair? What like pleases everyone? That's just the place we have to get to, right? So there's really some promise, and I have a lot of hope and faith. And if you're out there and you're worried about this in any way, shape, or form, there's really good reason to believe that this could indeed actually be what it has promised to be. Getting rid of the swamp, getting rid of the corruption, and there's a lot. I don't think Trump has to really go after too many people. A lot of this stuff is already happening by itself. The P. Diddy situation and Jeffrey Epstein, there's more and more and more and more and more are going to come from all of this. And these things are going to come out. And we're going to live in a less corrupt world, and that's wonderful. And, we're starting to hear about aliens and all these other things. But I've been saying to, my friends, I'm like, this isn't the thing that we all most need. And I mean, it's sort of self-serving to say that what we most need is this show. But unfortunately, it's really true. If I could put this show, or a version of it, of the, teaching the information into every classroom across the world, we could change reality tomorrow. If you allowed me to, if I could duplicate myself so that I could do it, right? If you allowed me to educate the children of today on just how powerful they really are, and that their bad thoughts create bad reality, but their good thoughts and their imagining and their inspired effort can create heaven on earth. Truly, really. But they're equally powerful the other way, and they can destroy their lives with the wrong ideas and the wrong thing. Like, a world armed with the proper information can change the world. And at the very least, it knows that it has the power to change the world. That's the thing. We all need to know we're one. We all need to know that we're living in a mind, in a virtual reality, for lack of a better term. We're living in a polarity where every formation of God that's outside of the great nothing that exists as rest in between everything rises and then falls, effort, and then you just rest. That God and the activity creates this polarity, the creativity that brings reality into existence, the consciousness that brings reality to existence. That creates the polarity. And the polarity creates the genders. And you're both genders, you're both masculine and feminine in different variety. And you are a unique vibration based on your measurement of those two vibrations. And now you have a vibration of those two. You're harmonic. And there's all these polarities of you are out there in the universe that are balancing to you, that can bring you back to balance. These are very important things to teach the next generation who's coming up right now. I mean, seriously. It's just like this, and what did I just go over there, if you've been paying attention? The first 5 laws of the universe, as I like to, teach them over here. The law of one, the law of mind, the law of polarity, the law of vibration, the law of relativity, and the law of gender. It's actually, the first 6. So, you are this great vibrating energy coming from the mind of God, all this stuff, and then to really explain deeper, what we've been explaining, that there's a perpetual exchange of energy, and this works best when you are in cohesion with it, when you're working with the waves, when you're riding. If your body's surfing, you wait for the wave to come, and you come and you take that inspired action. And that there's the law of cause and effect. When you take that inspired action, it's going to lead to the right things. When you hit it way too late or way too soon, that's going to have a different cause and effect. And that energy, but is perpetual. It's going, it'll come back around. You'll get another opportunity. And there's the law of rhythm, as like you go up in severity or you go down in severity. You're always changing. You're always shifting in one direction or another. And this week, we're talking about the law of correspondence, which essentially is, what is it that I like to say? It's like sort of it's like the law of larger corresponding rhythms. If we talked about last week that there's all these rhythms, and of course, whether it's north, south, east, and west, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and shapes, and various things that represent rhythmic patterning, vibrations, paths from this to that, whatever. This is larger ones that exist on top of this. And ultimately, when I'm teaching you these universal laws, or reminding you, as I like to say, the important thing to remember for me is that, why do they need to know this? The law of correspondence, guys, why do you need to know that? And by the time I was finished refreshing myself and, thinking about having this conversation, because I wanted to share these laws, these universal laws right from the beginning. But at the same time, I had to kind of make up an excuse for why I was showing you them with each one. But they're so foundational and fundamental, it's just a matter of time before you hit on the thing. And ultimately, the thing with correspondence is this is about your health. We live in a backwards system that treats your symptoms instead of the cause of your problems. So, we're very good, in this day and age with our surgeries and intervening. And, if the baby's coming early, we could do. But meanwhile, with our stupidity, we're losing people to things that we shouldn't lose babies to all the time, and doing all sorts of things, losing people to drugs and medicine regimens, and giving people unnecessary surgeries and things like we've like gone off the chain with like our drugging and our surgeries, and all of this is to go and correct symptoms. Like, let's say, case in point, this is a good example for me. If I were to go to a back doctor, and I've been keeping my back at bay from getting as bad as some of my friends and some of my elders has gotten, but they might recommend a bunch of surgeries to me and tell me, okay, we'll go in, we'll shave this bone down, we'll do this, we'll do X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. And they're going to, fix me up. I've seen with the people that they do this to, they're just over and over again, back and forth and back and forth. They just keep ending up right back there because they're not doing anything about the cause of the spine stuff that's going on. They're just going directly into the injury that's being caused by the cause, the symptom of the cause, and they're fixing that. Now, if they had been taught properly, they might say, hey, look, you've got some scoliosis that's ultimately driving this. And there are some chiropractors and some osteopaths and some things like that might be good, that might be able to shift your spine the right way, get your bend in your neck the right way, and then you'd get a natural relief from all this pain that you're in. As opposed to the surgeon who goes, I just cut you open and I'll cut out that nerve and then you don't got to feel it anymore. Which is what is happening in lots of cases, not just backs, just like in general, that's sort of the approach. Oh, you got an injury? Oh, you got pain? Here, I'll give you a painkiller. Oh, you got this, this, that. Hey, doc, my finger hurts when I do this, and he goes, stop doing that. Stop doing that. But there's a fundamental problem going on here underneath the skin. Stopping doing that's not going to fix my finger that hurts. So there's a real deeper thing going on here as well that we're going to get into today as we go through correspondence. And I guess I'm going to kind of leave this stuff for the end and like cover it after I go through all my notes. But your health is directly based upon your mental health, because what's law number 2? We're living in a giant mind. And our injuries are actually the execution of mental programming that we need to work out. And, this is not me talking. This is, lots of ancient wisdom and from various sources, that is basically saying if you have even a broken leg, it is something to do with your root chakra and blockages there. Generally. Sometimes it can be in another chakra and somehow it manifested itself in the leg, tying it together in one way or another. But generally speaking, everything is tied into your chakra system. You've got 7 chakras. Your throat chakra is communication. So you got throat cancer. You may not be, communicating. You may not be using your voice to communicate. You may not be sticking up for yourself. If you've got some kind of cancer, generally speaking, that has been linked to anger. Anger that you can't let go of. When people die of cancer, it eats away. There is a physical manifestation of this thing, of course. Let's say they canceled cancer tomorrow. The other side of things would find another way to execute the energy of your anger besides the cancer. Well, cancer is not an option anymore. Something else will come up. And that's what's happening all the time. Essentially, the simplest way to say, there is a corresponding energetic malfunction to any physical malfunction that you may ever have. And nobody's telling you that. Nobody's telling you that if I cure this cancer and you leave here and you don't get over your anger, you're going to come back with cancer in a few months. That'd be good to know, right? Wouldn't that be good to get to the bottom of the energetic thing that was causing your problem instead of the doctors just going, okay, patched you up, send you on your way, to have it happen again? And what if this time you don't catch it or whatever else? Granted, you shouldn't fear death. Death is, where you came from. You're a consciousness. You came into this thing as like this illusory idea of what you really are, which is a consciousness that can't be hurt, and you're living on for forever as consciousness, until you fold yourself back into various other pieces of the consciousness, and then you're living on as that. Your life force is never going away. You're always going to be a part of the thinking and the fun of the universe and its creation. So, don't fret a lot about that necessarily. These are all lessons, but you don't want to have to go back to the doctor 2 years later for something that's the exact same thing, and he gives you the medicine goes away. Like the thing keeps going away. That's the universe telling you, hey, you got an anger issue in the case of the cancer, or whatever it may be. You've got some anxiety, you've got some ego about something. You're out of balance in one way or another, and now this injury has taken place to bring your attention to it in one way or another. So we'll probably talk about that a little bit more before the show's done, but I'm just going to start going through my notes that I made for the show yesterday. I just didn't have a chance to get to the show. All right, so correspondence, larger corresponding rhythms. Dog on the way to work, rhythm, and then correspondence. Okay, so I told like a simple story about a scenario of every day you walk to work. One day, there is a dog that gets off the chain somewhere in the middle of your walk. He attacks you viciously. The owner comes out, pulls him off you. You end up getting some stitches. It's a harrowing experience. And now, every single time you walk to work, you're having a certain experience. Now, the experience that you're having, if you can imagine this with me, the next day, you got your stitches and you walk to work and you get to that point where the dog attacked you and it's fresh in your mind and like, oh my God, like that was so scary. This dog attacked me. Whew, right? You get yourself to work. Now, like you're still like thinking about it because you just walked and you're all freaked out and whatnot. Now later on you walk home. You pass that spot. You're still, again, just a little unnerved, but, you walk home a little bit faster. And now the next day happens. Next day, it's similar, but it's a little less because you had the experience yesterday. You knew what it was going to be like. You were prepared that you were going to be a little freaked out. So now you're a little less freaked out. So you fast forward weeks of this going back and forth. And now, you're walking and sometimes you even sort of forget that anything happened. But now, today, you're walking and you realize that you've kind of forgotten anything happened because when you get to a certain point on your walk, there's a really loud ruff ruff, and it startles you, and it immediately brings you back to that moment where you were attacked by that big dog, and you get like freshly freaked out. Now, you're not quite as freaked out as when you got attacked by the dog, but you're freshly freaked out. And now you head back, and this time you walk home like, it's like it's been time, but, you're freshly freaked out. And now weeks go by of that, and it's this other vibration. And then maybe at a certain point, you are reading a book about facing your fears and you realize that like, oh man, and you decide that you're going to get yourself some pepper spray and, something that might be able to ward off a dog and, like a little something in your bag. So when you're walking to work, you can feel safe just in case anything happens. Or you do something, you make a change in your mind, you start going to the gym, you teach yourself karate, you make some sort of shift so that you can feel better. And now you start very consciously hyping yourself up to feel better for a little while. And each time as you're hyping yourself up, the experience is changing each time. Now I've already hyped myself up once. Now I know what that feels like. Okay, cool. And then eventually it becomes this rich, real thing where you're no longer feeling scared. But there's a whole process. And it is filled with correspondence. Little rhythms that lead to new rhythms. There was a little log that, I don't know where I'd gotten this information at the time, but I really liked how it was written out. They were explaining sort of the basics to any sort of manifestation, which starts with receptivity. And it goes receptivity to inspiration. Inspiration to imagining. Now you're thinking about the thing like, oh, okay, well, what would it actually be? Or how would you actually do that? So then you go imagining to action. Now I can take some action that I imagined what the action might be and like how you would do it. And then action to manifestation. Starting to take action. There's things that are actually starting to be real. Manifestation leads to the release of the outcome because here it is. It's coming. The release of the outcome leads to more receptivity. So this can be the thing sometimes where we get stuck on manifestation. We feel like we haven't had manifestation. It's a great thing to just go and start doing little things. Manifestation can be reading a book. Manifestation can be talking to a friend. Any number of things. Actually doing something, taking action that leads to a thing. I'm sad, so I'm going to go talk to my friend, and then that manifestation leads to me going, oh, look, I feel better. And then I release outcome, and all of a sudden, bing, I get another inspiration because I've gone into a state of receptivity. So again, for you to follow that, because it's really a great little chain, because this is the way. When you get blocked from this receptivity, that's the problem. And generally, that's the big blockage, receptivity. Once you're in receptivity, it's not that hard to get into inspiration. Once you've got inspiration, it's not that hard to start imagining. Once you started imagining, it's not that hard to take action. And once you started to take action, the manifestation, it's already there. And when the things are manifesting, you release the outcome. So it's just about creating little things in your life, little opportunities for you to manifest, whether it's making dinner or doing little things that you can very much do, that you feel like you can do, all those little pieces of manifestation. That sort of opens up this chain for the release of outcome and receptivity to come in. And that cycle is just going to start again. It's going to go over and over and over again. And there's going to be correspondence to this because everything is based on what came before. Mother Ayahuasca once showed me this amazing weaving braid. It was like it was a multi-layered braid. But there were two important layers. There was a layer of the physical world where a man, let's say one braid, and a woman, and it doesn't have to be a man and woman. Well, in this case, I guess it does. For the sake of you'll see. So a man and a woman, and they cross. And this cross has a dueling cross in the heavens on the other side of things, in the dimension of consciousness. And that cross is a being or beings who love the man and the woman and want to go down and be with them. So as they braid together and they create children, those children are waiting in the heavens, essentially, and come down to join them. And then eventually those children grow up to be the lovely beings that the consciousness on the other side of creation wants to come down and join as well. And that all of our families and family tree, it's just made of love. It's just this chain of us loving each other and wanting to come into existence with one another. And very much that is a correspondence. That is they are like this, and this is great, and I love this. And then we come down and we represent some of the things that we love about them and some of the things that we think are a bit different. We take new actions and take new positions in correspondence to the positions that have already been taken. And that just perpetually happens. So everything is correspondence. And you'll see this more and more and more. I'm going to try to break this down in lots of ways. So one of the ways I really loved hearing this talked about was somebody had and again, I wish I could give credit to a couple of the people, but I listened to so many different people. It'd be all different types. But they had just brought up the point that without the law of correspondence, there would be no conversational analogies. And when you're comparing something to a rose or comparing something to a bull or an animal or whatever, you could not compare this thing to the other things if we weren't all living in this correspondence thing. There are basics of reality that are correspond. We all have to eat. We're all bleeding. We all have bodies. There is necessities that we all have. So they prop up in every walk of life, and it's very easy to make simile and metaphor about the animals and the wilderness and inanimate objects even, and compare us to any number. He was dead like a stone. The analogies are very much the soul of the law of correspondence. Correspondence proves that every preference is essentially correct, in that there is an equal antithesis to you or your position inherently in nature. So if you think, I'm trying to it's like there's like exceptions to this, of course, because the universal law is that we don't want to hurt each other, right? So you take away that part of it in the explaining right here. So putting aside all like knowingly hurting one another, any feelings that we have, that's really what I should have written, feelings, are correct. They're all just degrees of a feeling being had by the same being. And whatever feeling you have, there's an antithesis to it. That antithesis exists to teach you the balance of where you're at. And everything essentially is balancing in that way. We're meant to we're all heading towards a balancing point in the middle. But there is whatever's left of the extremes on the left and the right, and whatever measure of extreme on the left there will be the equal measure on the right. But the extremes are always lessening, and there's always more and more of us falling somewhere into the middle. So, and because of that sort of nature of it's like, is cold good or bad? Is hot good or bad? Some people might think that I like the cold, I like the hot. There's different preferences. Some people some animals prefer the cold. Some animals prefer the heat. So it can be different. Generally speaking, anything that you may find detestably evil that is not, again, a direct going at hurting somebody directly, but just sort of a position that somebody's taking or a thought somebody's having or whatever. There is an antithesis of that thought, and that thought can be rationalized by this consciousness, because this consciousness is essentially using the same rationalization apparatus that you are. There's a lot of different apparatuses that get in the way of that initial apparatus that we're all using the same one of. So, it can appear that people are using very, very different faculties, but on an instinctual level, we are generally pulling from the same well and coming to similar conclusions when we are not being lied to and affected in various ways from our receptivity. When we're receptive, we get inspired, and we know the answers, we get this shit together. So yeah, correspondence really generally is just a mirroring aspect of reality that is sort of automatic and there, and it sort of creates phantoms, but the phantoms aren't exactly really real, okay? And I hope I'm doing an okay job explaining that, because some of these things are a little bit abstract, but it's really just like, there's some Jew somewhere who feels like he's fighting for his family and they were hurt in the Holocaust. And there's some Nazi somewhere who feels like he's fighting for his family. His dad was demonized. He was a great man. He was so kind to us. He was really good. He told me what was happening. He told me everything. He said that never happened. And, and he has this there are people out there like this. And it's like, yeah, people would be like, how dare you give a platform to, I just want us to reach a stalemate, I just want us to be in the middle. And there are people with passionate things to say on that side of things. And I don't really believe that we can just wipe everybody off the face of the planet who's not actively harming anybody. We're all here together, and we need to come to some sort of accord. So, something has driven that Nazi, and it's not wrong. Okay? It's not wrong. We can't just demonize the people completely. If somebody is actively going around and victimizing, torturing, hurting people, that's a completely different story. Yes, those people aren't great. There's lots of things that we can talk about what we do to people who are using their consciousness to dominate others and be destructive. I'm not about that. But when it comes to ways that people think, we're all innocent people. And we think the ways that we think usually pretty lovingly, unless we're one of those pieces of shit who are out there actively hurting people. And then you shouldn't listen to anything that those people think, because yes, they do think in this the world revolves around me. Screw everybody. Everybody else is a resource. I'm just going to use them. Like, yeah. So we're separating those pieces of shit. We're just saying, if you're dealing with, your moms and the dads of the world and your average people who are not victimizing people, it's very easy to be upset about everybody. You're a Republican. I can't believe it. Like, you see it going around on the internet. Or other people go, I can't believe you're stupid. We got to be open-minded. We got to be able to talk to each other and not, destroy each other and not vilify each other. So essentially, that's what this call is here. That correspondence is very natural. There's naturally going to be opposing minds. Those opposing minds are really important for you to kind of get to the bottom of if you are brave, because those are the consciousnesses that can balance you, that are capable of bringing you full circle and having you come to where you should really be. If you're feeling extremely triggered and on the edge and having a lot of energy for a thing in particular, that's a sign that, maybe you're a bit over the top about something, and perhaps you're out of balance. Okay. It all fits together perfectly based on the everything that came before. So I was talking earlier about Mother Ayahuasca and like the weaving of this consciousness. And I had experience the other day. I did like a big Superman dose of mushrooms and was meditating. And I had a really, really powerful experience. Suffice to say, at the end of it, I had this experience where like I kind of fell down. I didn't fall down, but like it was like sort of I like laid down, but like I was falling to the ground, and I was realizing that I was pressed up against all of the other consciousnesses. Like I was like pressed up like right against them, like in like some form of reality on one level or another. I was just sort of like the bubbling of consciousness, and next to me there was more consciousness, and to this other side was more consciousness, and above me there was more consciousness, and I was just surrounded by all their consciousness. And even though I was like sort of like in this moment I was like bowing out of reality, they had to very sort of like gently take me out of reality, because I was very much a part of it and very connected to it and connected to all things and connected to everything. Like it was just right up against me. And that's really the depth of what I mean when I say it all fits together perfectly. It really does. I've had a few different very powerful experiences that, these, so much of these, when you go on like the plant medicine, people think that they're hallucinating. They're not hallucinating generally. Generally, they're seeing something that is real that they don't normally see, for one reason or another. And when you go in with a better understanding of the experience that you're going to have, often you can, be shown things and be very conscious of what you're being shown. And I remember one time, and I won't say I was conscious of what I was being shown at the time, but I sort of asked them to explain what I'd been shown, and now I understand it very viscerally. It was beautiful. I saw a vision of my backyard, viewing it a way that apparently we will see things in the future. And it's not like that now for one reason or another, but one day when our consciousnesses rise higher, and in this moment my consciousness was high enough to perceive this way, and I saw a world that seemed to be completely on top of itself. Like everything, the trees and the background and the fence and the floor, and like everything seemed like one. Everything seemed one. And at the same time, everything seemed like it had the perfect amount of space for itself. It was so strange. Like what I saw, it should have looked crowded to me. Like everything was like bunched up on top of each other somehow. But instead, it at once seemed very close together, and at twice seemed infinitely separated, like perfectly separated, in a profound way that made like each thing important and like boldly visible and prominent in my view. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I, meditated on it afterwards, and my guides had basically told me that one day you and the world, you will see the world like this all the time. It's just that vibration of closeness and oneness has not been realized yet, but it's coming. And, and this is sort of a preview of things to come. So there is this closeness of all things, and this idea that if this exists, this exists. And if this exists and it's a desire, it exists. Like if you invent a woman today that like you want, you're like, oh my God, she looks like this, and da, da, da. I mean, granted, generally speaking, when it comes to manifestation, they tell you to keep it general. So sometimes, sometimes people will have something that's like, she looks like this, and they'll just be hung up on that thing. But some of the other things are very general. In general, for me, I just wanted somebody who had a really big heart and loved me so much and was willing to, make love to me all the time. Like we loved each other, and like we just couldn't keep our hands off each other, and wanted to work with each other. That was another thing. Wanted to, somebody that I could work with, somebody that loved making love, and and made me feel like, like I was the best, and that that I was fulfilling for them on whatever level. Just wanted somebody that I felt like they were grateful that I was around. Those were like my main things. I didn't say they have to be really funny, or they have to have this color hair, or so you don't name all the things, but you can imagine incredible things for yourself, and you can know that it is possible that that thing exists in reality, because you are God, and there's no time. You knew that you were going to think of this thing as your fantasy girl or whatever else. You can put that girl, that boy, whatever, into the reality. They can exist. That being that you want, that represents that energy of the thing that you want, you're going to be surprised to find them one day. And you may even be like, whoa, I made you. And on some level you did. There's a bit of an inevitability about so many beings and us and so many things. And granted, these inevitabilities kind of started a long time ago, because most of our souls just didn't start yesterday. Our consciousness has been bubbling through the cauldron of reality and getting more complex for years and years and years and years. And now here we are, getting really conscious, where we're actually separating from this conscious physical being. Jesse's sitting on a couch, and I'm looking at myself from above me, or at least maybe this was the next form of consciousness, looking at how I'm talking. Do I sound okay? Blah, blah, blah. Eventually I put away these things, and I'm like, okay, I sound pretty good, and like, I guess I know what I'm talking about, so I can sit down and just casually talk about these things, and hopefully people aren't going to be like, Jesse, you don't know what you're talking about. You hope, and you sit there and you be casual, because you want to be speaking from the heart, actually communicating in a language that everybody can understand, not trying to make people feel like I'm smart and you're not, trying to open people's hearts and be an example for ultimately what all the lessons of all these things are, which is, we got to do unto others what we have them do unto ourselves. We got to treat people like they're all God, and that we are going to punish ourselves when we get to the other side and we realize that we did God dirty. We can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that to God, man. All right. Go game options. Many less options. Okay. So, a really cool lesson in correspondence, I think, that's just like a simple one. There's a game called Go. I think I played it once or twice, but not a big Go player, but it's a simple enough game to explain. There's just a board in front of you with a bunch of empty squares. And then one guy's got black circles, and the other guy's got white circles. And they place the circles in the squares, trying to surround the other person's circles. Like I'm going to put my circles around yours, and when I surround yours and I can like box you in, you lose yours. If you surround mine, I lose mine. So it's a thing of like we're trying to defeat each other by corralling our opponents, essentially. So on this board, I forget the number, but there was an insane amount of options in terms of your first move and all these different things. Places that you could put a dot. But once you put your dot down, the other person is working from correspondence. Now, granted, you may say, well, Jesse, what if I play my game the way I play my game, whether that guy plays his game the same way or not? Well, that's cool. And you could do that for a while, but eventually you will start to go, uh-oh, he's getting it too close to me. He's about to, like, you will have to make a corresponding move, a move that exists because your opponent exists, because the world exists. You are corresponding. And really, this is the thing. You are the correspondence to your reality. You are the measure of all the correspondences that you have had with your reality, with your parents, with your friends, with your family. You're just, that's it. That's who you are. Unpacking your correspondence to see that, so you can recognize that, oh, I put my white dot there because my brother had already put their black dot here. And with you, it's an even more complex board because there's the black dot and the gray dot and the blue dot, depending on how many members of your family you have, depending on how many siblings you have, how many friends you have in school. But even you go out into the world and, like, once Eminem puts his white dot in the black rappers world, well, the next guy who's a white rapper who puts his white dot in the rap world, he's judged based on Eminem. Correspondence. It's just constant correspondence for everything, all the time. And, like, there's this, and to a certain degree, you're like, yeah, man, like, I know, of course everything is corresponding and everything. But look at it. Do you know? Are you really getting it? Everything is simple mathematics and fucking magnetism all the time. Ipso facto presto changeo. You just start the fucking process of whatever it is you want to do, and the thing happens. You don't have to be afraid of these things. As you get it going, that wonderful cycle of open-mindedness and inspiration and imagining and action and manifestation, release that outcome and you're back to receptivity again, and you start doing some stuff. Everything is correspondence. You've been corresponding, but you can start to take yourself out of this mindless correspondence that you're doing, that you've been doing, and start to do a better one. So it says here, the Go game, you get so many options, less options once you start to play. Yeah, so once you start to play, you can, he put the one thing there. Now, he took away one move because he put the piece down there, so I can't put it down there. Say the guy put his opening move in my opening space. Obviously, I'm immediately correspondingly working and changing up based on them. And the universe is that. The universe is always moving and reacting to you, and you're reacting in correspondence. Is anything happening really, or is it all just so? It's an interesting question, right? This push and pull, this idea of I was experiencing the consciousness was like right on top of me, and there's a push and a pull. Is anything happening really, or is it all just so? Or is it all just reality breathing and pulsing? It's interesting things to think about, in sort of terms of consciousness. It's like we're just sort of imagining the parts that tie it together in the ways that seem like existence to us. Because the reality is just all of this pumping and pulsing and vibrating. And that's happening for every molecule and every being on planet Earth. It's very interesting. You'll have experiences like that if you ever take plant medicine, in a spiritual capacity, and you try to meditate with the plants and whatnot, and you can sort of feel your reality pulsing and as this one giant thing. Kind of like the Borg on Star Trek. Like you mentioned the Borg, we're all one. But you have to consciously choose to be a part of that one. And there are parts of it that you get to, handle by yourself, even though you're largely connected to the source of all things and being a part of the oneness, not just like executive decisioning, doing whatever the hell you want to do all the time exactly. But that's only because the oneness knows what you'd like to do, because you're part of the oneness. So always better to just be living from that place. So we talked about guitar, bass, harp. What am I saying? I wrote down guitar, bass, harp. So if you learn a guitar, now that you go to learn the bass, is that a bit of a different experience for you? And is it a corresponding experience to having learned the guitar in a number of different ways? And it completely changes the correspondence because, well, I already know guitar, so now I learn bass. Now you learn bass and you learn guitar. You go to learn the harp. Is that somehow easier? Because, well, you're already playing 2 other string instruments. What could you learn next that might be easier because you learn this other thing first? When you learn math, you start with what? Addition, subtraction, then you go to multiplication, then division, and then it just keeps getting more complicated, right? But it's all based on the stuff that you learn first. And there's corresponding things to learn after. There's corresponding things to discover after, as people, as counting was invented and the mathematics that we use today, were invented and getting more and more complex as people were figuring out more and more interesting ways to think about and arrive at information. I've told a story a couple times on the show when it's come up about Skid Row. They had an album called Slave to the Grind. And I really didn't like it when I first heard it because their previous album, which I think is just called Skid Row, it was much different. It was kind of more in line with, say, like a Bon Jovi-ish. Wasn't that heavy. The second album was very heavy. It was kind of too heavy for me at the time. But within like a 6-month period, I listened to a bunch of different bands that were very heavy that I really liked, that I got into. And by the time I came back to listen to that Skid Row album a second time for some reason, I really liked it. I didn't like it at the time, but a couple adjustments to the configuration of my listening apparatus, and I was like, you know what? I think maybe I had it wrong the first time. This is actually awesome. And what are we talking about there? A correspondence based on what I'd heard before. My feelings about it were one. Then, after that, somehow I ended up listening to heavier things. And then when I came back around to listen to it, my feelings about it corresponded to now being somebody who liked heavier music. Health, corresponding, as above, so below. It's a famous thing they love to say with all this shite. Corresponding energy, the aura, human health. So there's a wonderful book that I would recommend to you all called The Field. The Field explains how important the aura is. Your aura is essentially the architectural blueprint for your body. Your body grows into your aura and not the other way around. Your body isn't generating an aura as I used to think. Your aura is actually kind of like self-generating, and the body kind of grows within it. There's a decent amount of evidence to support that this is absolute fact in the book The Field, which you can check out. And accordingly, the plans on the other side of things, they're perfect. But there are lots of things that can get into our energetic field in terms of our negativity, our fear, our anger, things that are not jibing with the lightness and the love that really represent our souls, that will muck up our auras, and we will begin to attract physical injury or create illness, whether it be cancer or heart attacks, whatever it might be. But all of these things are ultimately there to teach us. Sorry, I'm at my children's house right now, and I told them to be a little bit less noisy, but you might have heard some noise going on in the kitchen right now because they're probably like, he's still not recording. They forgot that I was recording. Granted, I told them it was probably going to be an hour, and I am over an hour now, but I'm almost done. Anyway, these problems that come up in your mind, in your heart, they will manifest themselves in your aura. And this is why Reiki, when people go in energetically into your field and start pushing around, that's why that stuff really works. That's why people end up crying and whatnot, because they'll bring up old emotions and things that are stored in our auras. Largely speaking, the energetic field of our auras, it is an apparatus that is filled with our emotions and our traumas. And they turn into physical injuries and sickness. There's so many different people that you can dig into, kind of get into connecting to, your energetic body and your aura and whatnot. But like this is something that you got to care about enough to recognize, oh, I keep getting sick. Well, it's because of something energetic. It's something emotional. And I need to figure out what those things are if I'm really going to get my health under control. Bad to good to bad again. Harm torn apart. Made love to. Harm torn apart. Made love to. Oh, yeah. So we were doing a, there was like a sort of a thing. Again, this kind of ties into there being no bad per se. Well, like love making. Let's say if I started by beating you up, hurting you, and beating you up, and then at a certain point, I'm getting lighter and lighter. Now I'm just smacking you around. Now I'm just like kid play fighting you, and now I start caressing you, and I'm loving you, and I'm kissing you, and we're making love, and now eventually we're making love, and it's hard, and we're biting, and there's like violent, like things can like be extreme. Like there's like a too much of a good thing always. You could be killed by sex. Somebody could murder you through sex. And you could even be enjoying it mostly enjoying it. But you know what I'm saying? Like too much of anything can be bad. A punch in the face could be a really good thing if maybe you were crazy and you were going crazy and you were on a bad path, and this beating put you in a hospital and you had a chance to think about it. And you don't know on the other side of things what's driving and maneuvering everything around. Maybe this person who did the beating, maybe that was important for him and cathartic because in a past life, something terrible had happened to him, and now he's got to work out that energy. And this was a perfect setup, and, maybe he's supposed to go to jail, or maybe he's not supposed to go to whatever it is. You don't know. You don't know what the lessons and the things, the mechanisms of the other side are doing. But you should know that they're perfect. And they're constantly adjusting to the manipulations and bad decisions and attempts to control reality from man. Constantly, just adjusting all the time to how they're going to adjust things so that they can always be in control. God's always in control. And things can come up. We can try to take control of this and try to do this, whatever. But God just makes a new shift and then on with the show. Everything's always kind of coming back around again in this way. And God is good and God is bad. And it's this recognition though of God is us. We are us. It's all us. We're just hurting us. We're just creating karma for ourselves. We're just sinning against ourselves. This is foolish. We don't want to sin against ourselves. We don't want to experience on the other side when we reconnect to that little piece of us that's the person that we sinned against. We have to connect to the part that experienced the shit that we did to them. We don't want to experience being shitty to other people. If you're shitty to other people, you're going to experience it. You don't want to experience the shitty vibes you're putting out. You want to go to the other side of things and experience love and light from yourself. You're like, awesome, I was in the world and I was rad and life was good when I was around. That's awesome. I did no harm and I have no harm coming back on me. If that's not the case, you're going to go to the other side and they're going to be like, hey, buddy, we got to talk to you. You went through the world upsetting yourself. You were constantly pissing yourself off. And now you've got some pieces of yourself that have a bone to pick with you, and we're going to have to try this again. The trick is to get off that karma wheel, that bit of, and recognize it's like there's no bad, there's no good. Got to make peace. Got to try to just forgive myself, forgive everybody. We all don't know what we're doing. We haven't been taught very well, and we don't know what we do. And we're just trying to do, we should just try to keep doing better tomorrow than we did the next day kind of thing. We're in a loop. It's always your perspective that gives you the feeling of the experience. Yeah, your perspective on the thing as you come around that fifth time the dog, 10 times of passing that same place, your perspective has changed. But when we really get good at this, we can start to actively participate in the creation of our perspective in really visceral ways that allow to create new pathways for possibilities in our life, and new pathways for our health and our healing and just to progress, to do other things. But we have to think, we have to believe that things are possible in order to start to open up those corresponding pathways. Anyway, last thing I wrote here is find ways to get to the better corresponding perspectives. Yeah, they say like anger's better than sadness. Sadness is just, I'm going to go do something, and then you get to a place of like, I'm going to show those people. And then maybe you get to a place of, you know what, I love this and I'm doing this for me. And I'm glad that happened to me because it taught me and it made me stronger and I'm going to do better tomorrow. And I just love this. And I'm going to, when you can get there, when you get to that place of love, that's when you'll really be cooking with gas. But remember, it's all correspondence. You have to recognize it's going to take various rhythms, various patterns, various plans to get yourself to the place where the correspondence, the proof is in the pudding. The one thing's just everything's stacking on itself because you've got yourself where you want to be. The correspondences have led you to where you've gotten to now, and you have to consciously try to understand where you are in your life. Where are you heading to right now? Where do you want to be going? That's the question. I hope you join me again next week. We're going to be getting towards the end of the 12 universal laws before I get to 13 on my list, the way I like to do it, which is the law of attraction, or the law of attracting creation, as I like to call it. But next week, number 12 is the law of infinite compensation. And I'm not sure right now why you need to know the infinite law of compensation, but I'm sure I'll have a good reason to talk to you about when I come back next Friday for another awesome episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. Thank you so much for listening. Please share the show, comment, like, subscribe, all that shit. You're the best. Peace.